Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Vera. I'm the Executive Director of the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Centre. Welcome to Ontario's Global Water Leadership Summit Summary. As you may or may not know, Ontario's Global Water Leadership Summit concluded just a few hours ago. This event attracted world-leading water innovators, funders, thinkers, entrepreneurs, and researchers who engaged in meaningful and interactive dialogue on the future of innovation in the water sector. And now, a panel of experts will review the findings and outcomes of this summit, focusing on the new ideas generated in water innovation. I'd first like to introduce our moderator for this afternoon's discussion, David Henderson. As you may have already heard earlier today, David is Honorary Chair of Ontario's Global Water Leadership Summit. David is also the founder and managing director of XPV Capital Corporation, one of the largest firms in the world, solely dedicated to investing in high-growth water companies. At XPV, David focuses on identifying and investing in companies capitalizing on the significant opportunities created by the new water economy, a concept he developed. A respected speaker and expert contributor in the area of water technology and investing, he is also advisor to the Government of Ontario, Water Tech Week and Imagine H2O, and a member of the Water Environment Federation's Global Water Strategies Council. Please welcome David Henderson.
Thank you. Are we on? Testing? Are we on? Oh, testing, okay. Thank you for that. What I'm going to do is, this is going to be a bit of a free-flowing discussion, try and capture some of the insights that we've been discussing last few days at the Water Summit. But first, I'm going to ask each of my esteemed colleagues here to introduce themselves and give sort of a 1-minute overview of your organization, and then we'll go straight into questions. So we'll start with Laura. It's over to you.
Thank you very much, Dave. My name is Laura Shenkar, and I'm the founder of the Artemis Project. Is this on? We are a consulting firm, and I'm an entrepreneur turned consultant. We focus on water technology as it applies into the market, and we founded the Artemis Top 50 to list the leading 50 water companies. We bring together this year 12 judges from the GEs and the Veolias, as well as some of the small consulting firms, to select the best 50 companies. Outside in the hallway, you can see posters from each of them, and we had the pleasure of bringing them to the conference today.
Mia?
Great. My name is Mia Javier. I'm an analyst with the Cleantech Group. We are a market research advisory and events firm that's based out of San Francisco, but founded by Ontario's very own Nick Parker. We aim to really serve our clients of corporations and the investment community in tracking clean tech innovation. My role as an analyst with the company as the water analyst is to be able to track and provide insight on innovative water technology startups, lead any advisory work with our clients, our most recent being the US EPA, and finally programming any water-related events.
Thank you, Dave. Good morning, or good afternoon. My name is Trevor Hill. I'm President, CEO, founder of Global Water Resources. But you might be interested to know that back in the 80s, I was working with Xenon, deploying reverse osmosis systems into the Canadian Navy. I'm a Canadian. I live in Phoenix. For 10 years, we've ran a utility focused on water conservation and reuse in the arid Southwest. In December, we listed on the TSX. Our company is primarily focused on water conservation-oriented utilities in high-growth areas, and we have a very, very fast-growing software-as-a-service business that is defining the smart grid for water in the U.S. municipal market.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's get right into it. Mia, I'm going to put you on the spot first. You have a report that's going to come out post this event. We've accumulated all the great insight. You know, what do you think will be the 3 main themes of that report?
I knew I was going to be put on the spot right off the cuff. Yeah, I've been taking copious amounts of notes and really been enjoying myself listening to all the insights that have been flowing from all of the panels. I think one overarching theme that really was underscored to me during the summit was in the water industry, really this need for ecosystem building. I mean, we had groups of venture capitalists. The capitalists were there. There were regulatory agencies and policymakers who were all in the same room. Industry experts that all acknowledged just the need to not only create ecosystems sort of regionally, but within industries, but also to connect all of those key stakeholders and really supporting the development of innovative water technologies and understanding and acknowledging just how integrated this particular resource is and how much work we have ahead of us in terms of cooperating and building up this industry and turning water and managing water as if it is indeed a system. So that wasn't 3, but I'm going to start off with that as just kind of, and it's not an insignificant thing to acknowledge that, this ecosystem, building an ecosystem in water innovation, high tech in a water industry is quite new. And so organizing capital and regulatory policies and having the agencies there and the big global vendors and, very, progressive utilities like Global Water, really, this is, very important, so.
Yeah, no, certainly a lot of the feedback I heard out the days is we had a very unique combination of leaders. And it was very encouraging for the sector to have the financiers, the government, the regulators, the utilities, the big industry, they were all interacting, thinking about how do we take innovation to the next level. And you mentioned Global Water there as a progressive utility. One of the comments that seemed to come up in several of the panels was, the utilities weren't a conduit for technology. They're tough. They're slow-moving, conservative. Now Trevor, I've known you for many years now, and I know Global Water. I don't think that holds very much truth. And I thought maybe you'd want to challenge that statement because you're doing some pretty innovative things as a utility.
Well, that's right, Dave. And let's be honest. If you're a technology company in the formative stages of your development, then your mission in life is to break into the U.S. municipal market. That's the holy grail of our sector. And to do that, I in fact ultimately had to buy the utilities so that we could innovate inside them. It's a very tough market initially. But what we're finding, and frankly, I think what we can add to this conference in future years is more discussion on channels to market, more discussion on the psychology of the buyers, municipal buyers in the US, so that we can better prepare these excellent technology companies, both from a capital perspective, but also a marketing perspective, to penetrate that vast municipal market that will ultimately make or break these companies that we saw over the last couple of days.
And that's probably a good lead into a question for Laura. I mean, we had the Artemis 50 here. We had a huge breadth of different kinds of companies, different kinds of technologies. And I know one of the important things that has come out of this through your analysis is there's some pretty amazing impact happening in terms of what some of these technologies are doing. I thought maybe you want to take a few minutes and just maybe share with the audience what some of that impact is and what some of the potential of some of these technologies could mean to the water industry.
Well, thank you very much for asking me that question. What you look at when you look at technology is an engine for dramatic change. And it's exciting to see some of the advanced technologies actually coming down to earth and being applied. We talk about infrastructure breakdown, and there was a company presenting at the conference that has been able to chart in the London system that it can save $3 billion of infrastructure savings every year just by making concrete and steel dumb water infrastructure smarter. You've got innovations like sewage to energy from EMFC. So you can take sewage, a very renewable source of energy, and make electricity out of it. You've got innovations in blower technology. You've got new energy balancing systems from Mbala. You've got a lot of innovation, and you've got the people who are really making sure that that technology goes to market.
And that's, I think, a good sort of handover to Mia, because I know Cleantech group, you study many facets of the cleantech universe, and
Yeah.
water is one facet. And so we heard from Shiraz, the CEO of Cleantech Group, that there's some positive things going on, but there's some challenges there. But how do you see the capital flowing in the water sector, and do you think things like the summit will help drive and change some of those dynamics?
No, yeah. In Shiraz's keynote presentation, one of the numbers that we pull and share quite often is the fact that venture capital investments in water technology still hovers around 3% of clean tech venture capital, and clean tech venture capital is also around 20 to 30% of total venture capital dollars. Just to give you a sense of, it's still a very small slice. And I guess to your second question about how these events could help in terms of organizing those venture dollars around water technologies, I mean, I'll ever be the optimist to the extent that absolutely. I mean, we see bright spots of innovation. There are 30 out of the 50 companies that Laura's group has actually highlighted are indeed venture-backed companies. So that's actually quite interesting. And I mean, this is a market of incumbents, and to the extent that many of these technology vendors are trying to be proactive in terms of reaching out to partners, to the extent that economic development agencies and governments are likewise proactive in terms of reaching out to innovators and entrepreneurs. I can't underscore how important these types of networking events will be for these innovators, because again high tech and water. Since I've been in clean tech for a couple of years now, I mean, what's happening in the smart grid and energy efficiency and in other sectors, I mean, we see companies, I mean, that's coming out of our other analysts' ears, the types of companies that they're seeing. And a lot of the work that I end up doing is, very similar, proactively going out to events and, talking to people and trying to figure out what innovation is out there. So these types of vehicles to connect people, I think, will be very important.
Trevor, you've been, because as a follow-up to that comment, you've been in the industry for many years now, and you in your opening, he mentioned that you're part of the pedigree of the xenon history. So you sort of transitioned from high tech into the utility. Now you run a very high tech utility. What's your perspective? Have things really changed, say from 10, 15 years ago to what you see in the marketplace today? And should we be encouraged? Should we be depressed? What is your view of that?
Well, I think everyone who's been in the water business is passionate about the water business, and so I'm always encouraged. But it has changed. 10 years ago, this sector was all about purity of water. And that's where xenon got some traction. I was involved in bundling xenon technologies in the early 90s for reuse applications in municipalities, and some of the very first municipalities ever were bundled for that purpose. But now unfortunately, that clean water driver is moved down the list. Now the drivers in municipalities are around efficiencies and economies. And so you got to, as one of the speakers said earlier, and the lunch speaker emphasized, you got to understand the trend at the customer side, and then we have to focus on the business models that allow these technologies to move into the market. It's not just about selling a technology across the border. It's about building a business model that can break down the risk aversion barriers and the new economic barriers that exist in that vast market that we're all trying to get after.
Interesting. And I want to come back to the question of business models, because I think you at Global Water, you're operating a very interesting business model, and I hope you're willing to share a little bit of insight into how that's working. But I want to come back to the minute. I just want to turn to Laura and maybe get your views. You've been running. How long have you been running the Artemis Project now?
The Artemis Project since the year 2000, but for 6 years in water.
6 years in water. What trends have you seen changing over that 6 years? When you first got started, you got inspired to help these startups and help them, help the innovation cluster grow. How have you seen things change over that 6-year period?
So actually, to be honest, it wasn't helping the world or anything else. It was about a really strong high-tech opportunity. I come from startups from the IT and communications area, and this is a great economic opportunity. It does have to do with water, which we all inherently are concerned about, but the idea is that there's a bottom line excitement about innovation making money here. So initially, it was very difficult to find companies that were really thinking about business models and how you could really rank up the ecosystem. You're beginning to see more and more skilled entrepreneurs looking at how you really get over that initial ramp with the different pilots and start to really ramp up. You're also seeing ecosystem initiatives from around the world with municipalities stepping forward and offering to pilot things, with corporations also looking at how they can participate both for the communities that they work in, but also for their business advantages. So you've seen Coca-Cola and Walmart and a lot of other companies take the lead. At this conference, we had SAP and IBM appearing for the first time at water conferences.
So, I just want to get a perspective here from Mia, looking at it from a global lens, because Cleantech now obviously sees trends all over the world, and right now last couple of days we had I think we had a very global lens because of the audience we had, but we had a lot of talk about Ontario. How does Ontario fit in the global scheme in terms of water innovation?
Well, I mean, one of the things first of all, if any of you were at the sort of opening of the Discovery luncheon, that is sort of a great testament to the overwhelming sort of ecosystem that's being built here in Ontario. You have the Centers for Excellence that's specific to water technologies. You've got the new sort of legislation that has been enacted, and a real interest in not only really commercializing the R&D type innovation, into big companies. So you have Mars and SDTC with some these are some unique kind of financing and kind of technology development vehicles, I think. And so that's one way. In the Singapore example as well, I mean, looking at innovation there, the drivers, again, quite different. This is another, kind of takeaway from the event. I mean, water is mission critical there. Again, their, goal is to kind of create sort of an idealized version of a water industry, sort of, innovation development hub. They're just, they've got the PUB, they've got different types of agencies, but again, sort of the same idea of, creating sort of a network to be able to build up these technologies that ultimately, I think, Sally Gutierrez mentioned this, that ultimately we're moving towards, whether it's large industries, and we had the mining sector represented, the food and beverage sector represented, water utilities represented. We want to ultimately, utilize these technologies as tools for more sustainable communities. And I think that's sort of, and that's an interesting and I think in a way sort of inspiring guiding star principle for, regions to really, work towards as you're trying to cultivate and promote water tech.
Yeah, I've certainly traveled to many regions of the world, including Singapore and different places like that. And I think one of the things I'm very encouraged about what we're doing here in Ontario is, and the Premier mentioned this in his speech as well, it's a very open for business concept. We're not saying, hey, you know what, we're going to try and create the whole water industry in Ontario. We need to work with Singapore. We need to work with Israel. We need to work with our friends in the US because the sector problems are so big and are so broad and the opportunity is so large that we really need a collaborative approach if we're going to be successful.
Right.
And I think that's a message that was, I don't know if you would agree, but I thought that message came out quite well during the day and a half.
So actually, I'd like to chime in here. One of the things that you hear internationally, both from investors as well as from the big powers that be, is how little is going on right now. When you think everyone knows about water, everyone knows about water scarcity, it is surprising how open the field is right now. We mentioned Singapore. They see this as a defense imperative. They've taken a really serious stand on this. Ontario has shown real leadership in stepping forward and really saying, this is an economic opportunity. We're really going to take advantage of this. You haven't seen that yet, and it really is a great opportunity where it won't be in a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, because there'll be others there, or someone's going to take advantage of this opportunity.
I think so.
So I want to come back to the point about business models and channels to market, because I would agree wholeheartedly that one of the things, we see lots of water companies and different water businesses, you know, and I heard a great quote is, you know, water research is actually cheap. Water technology scale up is very expensive. And so I want to come back to that point to you, Trevor. I mean, I think you're doing some pretty unique things at Global Water. I don't know if you want to take a few minutes and just talk a little bit about Fathom and some of the things you're doing that I think really talks to creatively and uniquely looking at different channels to market for technology.
Well, sure, Dave. I mean, I think what we realize for sure is that water prices are going up. And one thing for sure in the US is that municipalities remain in a crisis, and water prices are going up as a function of aging infrastructure, higher treatment standards, scarcity. So what you see in municipalities is that they're struggling for solutions. In our particular model, what we realized was that there were, in our niche, which is municipalities that are 50,000 people or less, there's 23,000 of those in the United States. It's a very large market. Most companies, many that we've met over the last couple of days, would be happy with a couple dozen of those. So the trick would be, how do we address that market, that very large addressable market? How do we get to it? And more than anything, it has to do with the psychology of the buyer and the current context of where we are in the marketplace. And what we realized was two things. One was we needed to eliminate the barriers, the perception of barriers for those municipalities to get to a decision point or not. And the barriers that we discovered were threefold, right? Risk aversion, lack of capital dollars, lack of IT infrastructure. Our business, as we say, we're defining the smart grid for water. And what that means is that in our business, we owned utilities, and we pioneered the methodologies to connect AMI, automatic meter infrastructure, that's reading meters 720 times a month via tower read, combining it with CIS, customer information systems. Those are the systems that allow you to bill your customers, collect money, and GIS. So geolocated CIS systems with AMI data is a very, very powerful tool for municipalities. And what we found is that if we could host that in our back office, we eliminated the lack of IT infrastructure barrier. So it's a SaaS model. We eliminated the capital barrier by changing the model so that it was a pay-as-you-go model. So our model is $5 per bill per month, or $6 per bill per month. And we financed it through the tax-exempt lease purchase pools of capital in the US. And we coupled that with a turnkey installation from a utility. So we managed to tackle head-on risk aversion, lack of capital, and lack of IT infrastructure with this model, Fathom. And suddenly we were able to, you'd be surprised, I have a call center in Phoenix. We make 1,000 outbound calls a week to municipalities. This is a week. Asking, telling, scripting, talking about Fathom, smart grid for water. What it does for municipalities is several things, right? Not only does it drive costs out of those operations, which are now historically fully manual, okay? AMI adoption in small municipalities is less than 1%. It allows them access to big city technologies that they could otherwise not access. So it's highly defined. The other thing that we discovered was that there's a real push to get data in customer hands, right? The scarcity mandate will ultimately be controlled by telling customers in real time how they're doing and giving them intra-month data so they can manage their own behavior. Now, no one's doing this in the sector right now, so we built the protocols to allow customers real-time access on a push basis so they could figure out where they were. So now there's something for the customers, there's something for the municipalities, and a model that works in today's economy. This was designed, this is a post-recession business plan. And in those ways, we managed to get a little traction.
No, and I think it's a pretty exciting because obviously very innovative approach to the problem, but also very innovative channel. Because what you have here, when you think about this, it's almost like a new channel, right? It's utility to utility, which I don't think, I think if we went to one of these conferences 5 years ago and we said, hey, you know what, we're going to get into the business, we're going to create a channel called utility to utility, I don't know, I think we probably would laughed out of the conference. So I think it's a very exciting concept, and I just want to reinforce, because it's something that came up consistently at the conference, is this whole psychology of the customer, is the fact that you are a utility. It's very easy for you to say, hey, you know what, we use this too. You can come see it, come experience it, right? And that's a pretty powerful selling proposition.
And really what I see here in Ontario, and what's so exciting, why so many people are here, you don't see this level of excitement, investment in technology anywhere else. And if we can engage the municipalities here in concert with venture capital and the technology companies and build those platforms and give the chance to demonstrate some of the emerging technologies, that gives you a huge leg up into selling into that vast municipal sector you want to do. And so I think that's a critical takeaway from this is that collaboration, as you say, getting those scale up barriers achieved so that you can then market to this highly risk-averse sector. And that's a critical element. I can't tell you how many excellent little technology companies will run out of cash before they make their first sale. Yeah. And we collectively have to figure out how to incubate them, get them ready for the real market.
Maybe that's a good handoff to Laura. You've been looking at these Artemis companies for the last several years now, studying, their progress. How would you characterize what their big challenges are? I mean, is it really just all about access to capital, or do you see other things there? I mean, one of the criticisms that we constantly hear or we constantly see is we get a lot of techies up there. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the techies get very focused on the technology, mm-hmm. and not necessarily focused on, as we heard at the lunchtime, the higher level benefits. Is this, maybe you want to characterize that for us?
Well, I guess the panel today was a group of investors who have been investing in water for decades. And then the former CEO of GE, who's been operating in water. And they have a lot of scars, and there's been a lot of blood on the highway. When they look at a lot of these technologies, they already know where the rabbit holes are. And the number one thing is not access to cash, but access to cash at the same time as you have access to your marquee customer, which was another theme from the blueprint to $1 billion, and then also access to partnerships. So I think the idea is what you've seen with some of the investments is that if you don't have the ecosystem as well as the cash, you're not going to be able to make it in water. You might have been able to make it in software, but water is going to be a bigger trick. And so the companies that are succeeding happen to have CEOs, in my opinion, who've been able to do a lot of the ecosystem build for one company at a time. What you're talking about is maybe doing some economy of scale in the ecosystem development. And I don't think there's any question that the market is hungry for innovation and efficiency.
No, I think that's an excellent point. In particular, and it seems to be a constant theme that comes up, this whole collaborative partnership concept, because it is such a complex industry, right? You got so many different users and end users and types and applications. I've often wondered, and when people ask me, is water really an industry? I'm not too sure it's an industry. It's kind of like the internet. Is the internet an industry? It just touches everything. And we got to start, and when you start thinking about how complex that can be, you got to have partners and collaboration to make it work.
And if I could just chime in I completely agree with that comment actually, that a lot of the companies that we've tracked that actually have been successful, the few that have been successful in actually raising venture capital, at the end of the day, I mean, there are very few companies that have kind of, that have more than 10 customers. I do, there are those that do are kind of exceptions to the rule. So, to your point about, not only is it important to get access to capital, and not only is it important to get these testing, piloting, reference sites sort of under these, companies' belts, but yeah, these channel partnerships and really, getting access to customers. I see that's one very interesting trend we're seeing as well. Not a whole lot of customers.
So let me just follow up on that. I think there is a good news piece of that. For the last 3 years, we've had the Artemis Top 50, and I've watched these very promising companies put in a lot of mileage on their frequent flyer accounts and really take a bag out and sell things. And what you're beginning to see is a group of companies that have a critical mass of customers. So what you're always looking for is where things start to scale up. I think over the next 12 months, a year from now, you're going to be able to say, well, I saw that company, and I saw that company, and I saw that company before they were successful.
Okay, I'm going to switch directions a little bit, switch the flow. We had the Ontario government there today, but we also have a lot of policymakers around the world paying attention to water. Based on what you saw at the summit, maybe we'll go down the panel. We'll start with Laura. What would be the one thing you would tell a policymaker, based on what you heard in the last 2 days, that they should be doing to improve the environment for water innovation? You can pass if you want to think about it.
I want to think about it.
Mia, put you on the spot?
I think I'm pretty sure that Bookie Oren said this.
Okay.
But it was sort of interesting, and obviously this doesn't apply to this gentleman's utility, but incentivizing utilities in the largest, arguably the largest water market, the U.S., to utilize new technology. So I will steal his.
Steal his?
Well, I think, I mean, I've been involved in attempting to have policy changed for a few decades. So I can tell you for sure that as a government, you don't have to focus as much on technology as you have to focus on putting the incentives in place, like the Premier said earlier today. And really, in the U.S., you'd be horrified to know that we don't have a federal policy on water of any kind. And so, so the water policy that we follow is state by state, right? And not only that, but right now we don't encourage, in most cases, companies to even conserve water. So what I would say is not only design a water policy that incents customers and technology companies at the same time. And you do that by setting high standards and by setting per capita limitations on customers. And then you won't believe what technologies will spring up as a function of helping achieve those goals. And so we don't, we're floundering a bit in the U.S. right now. In the Southwest, we know for sure scarcity and population growth lines are going to cross. And yet, in Arizona, our watering policies are more lax than they are in Vancouver. Now, how is that possible? Why don't we incent utilities to sell their customers less? So that's where policy needs to go.
And that's an interesting challenge, right? Because, with water conservation, the utilities that get really good at that, that means less revenue for them. And that's an interesting dynamic on a business model, right?
Well, yeah, and it opens up this whole matter of, and this is beyond this panel, but on rate decoupling and California now is on a program called 2020. So it's a 20% reduction by year 2020. And utilities are petrified that that'll cut more than 20% out of their revenue. Right. And so, in fact, they're incented not to do it. And what we're grappling with as utilities is the rate designs that allow utilities to maintain stable revenue while reducing consumption. And this concept of rate decoupling is something that governments are grappling with everywhere. here in Canada and everywhere. And so what you have to do is build robust rate designs that have incentives in the right places, along with the incentives that I mentioned earlier, so that we don't cripple our utilities as we drive consumption out of their operations.
Yeah, it might be the laws of unintended consequences. We might get really good at conserving water, but then have no capital to invest in the technologies to maintain those systems.
Precisely.
So Laura, we'll come back to you. Did you think of your one policy?
Well, I've done a lot of policy work in California around emissions reduction and water conservation. I worked on the 2020 bill. So I guess my first reaction was the obvious one in the United States is if you could attack the agricultural piece. That's the most obvious piece in terms of conservation. But there's something that we didn't talk about at the conference, which I think we're going to probably next year. There's an opportunity that regulators really struggle with, in that the small and medium enterprises that do most of the polluting today can't afford the technology they need to comply. So on a regular basis, the US EPA is stuck with either driving someone out of business or ignoring pollution. So there's a natural opportunity for a government to say, look, if you see an opportunity, maybe we'll finance it, maybe we'll help you adopt new technology and address the environmental impact.
Okay, we'll switch directions again. You know, we've got to keep the audience on their toes. And then we'll finish this off here, and maybe we'll turn it over to the audience for some questions. But what was the most exciting technology that each of you saw during the summit? It can be an application area, or it can be a particular technology.
I'm going to stay out of this one.
Yeah.
So, I'll go first.
Okay.
I'll be brave. There are kind of two areas of, I guess, innovation that I'm particularly interested in, and one falls under that kind of broad theme, umbrella of, recovering, minerals and nutrients and energy from wastewater. Laura showcased a number of these different companies, including Astara, MFC, and I think, to the point of IT and water, as we are trying to kind of close the loop in our water cycle, it's going to be very important for us. You can't, as they say, you can't measure what you don't know. And so I think what Trevor is doing, and other companies are doing as well in terms of creating some creating better quality and more data on our water resources. I think those particular technology areas are very interesting, and also VC friendly.
Sorry?
And also very VC friendly.
VC friendly. Yeah, very nice. As an end user, do you have? I'd be interested in your perspective as a utility that may or continues to innovate and use technology. What did you see during the day and a half that made you excited?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, I'm excited about the whole thing. I'm excited about the investment. I'm excited about the investment community being here. I think the stuff that has the most relevant near-term application, as Mia said, it revolves around the combination of water and IT. And primarily because it answers the efficiency question, it starts to drive conservation. It all has to do with data. Very few municipalities know much about where all their water is, where it's going. I saw a variety of technologies there that, given a chance, could see some real application. And one thing I should say is that, look, we're a Canadian listed company in Phoenix. If there are companies out there that want to come down and test their technologies in my utilities, I'd be delighted to do it with them. We have partnerships with universities down there. Our utilities are really almost laboratories. You've seen them, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to get a scale up chance to test some of the technologies with us down in Phoenix, we'd be delighted to do it. And every chance we get to accelerate, promote, launch some of these guys, we'd be happy.
Excellent. Laura?
So I love all my children, so I'm not going to answer the question, but I would like to perhaps point to a few technologies that address something that's emerging in the commercial market. So Ontario's own Evantech, for example, is looking at the whole idea of cooling towers. This is one of the great unmet opportunities in terms of both energy savings and water savings. And this is a company that has been plodding ahead, staking out commercial sites. That commercial opportunity is where the first places that you're going to see the answer to me is challenge about number of sites. So you see a variety of companies addressing the number of sites issue in the commercial market, which is very different. So you see an Advantech, you see a Myox, you see a HydroPoint beginning to make steps in that direction as well.
No, and I would agree with all the points, but I was very encouraged to a lot of connections being made with, like, for instance, mining and water, the oil and gas and water, food and beverage and water. And I thought on the last panel there was a very interesting discussion around, as we have a lot of aging infrastructure out there, how are we going to manage, dealing with that as these cities expand? And the word I kept hearing was decentralized and distributed systems. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And I've often believed, and I've shared this, I know, with Trevor and others, that it's kind of like, I was invested in the telecom in the 90s, and in computers, saw similar trends where we went from the mainframe to the PC. The mainframe didn't disappear, but the PC really enhanced the life of the mainframe. And I think we're going to start to see some of that activity as well, especially as the systems get smarter. Because one of the things that's very important if we're going to have decentralized system is we definitely need good data, good control, and so it's almost like a combination of these things that are coming together. And Mia, you look like you want to say something or maybe comment on that.
I completely agree, and especially if you're looking, you asked earlier about international markets. I mean, we didn't touch on it too much at this event, but certainly the emerging markets. I mean, where you have places like India, China, to a certain extent, even areas in Southeast Asia that don't have, as we have here in Europe and in North America, these aging kind of established centralized water infrastructure, and to imagine in India they're going to build all these like a huge piping infrastructure underground is, probably a distributed system there, whether it's in energy and then also in water. I think I couldn't agree more. I think flexible, distributed systems, are also very interesting. And anyway, I mean, when you think about certain like industries, I mean, that is a distributed system. A Coca-Cola of the world, a mining, they are. They have their own systems, and so that is sort of a distributed model. But to the extent that may even happen for, rural communities. I mean, in the U.S., there's a huge. I'm totally blanking on the numbers, but the amount of people that are using well water that don't have access to water, from centralized systems is actually a significant market that certainly the EPA also cares about, and water users, residential water users care about.
Okay, I think we'll take a brief pause and maybe throw it out to the audience if we want to get some questions. I do believe there's mics here. Let's make this interactive. I know some people in the audience here, like Carlos. There's got to be some good questions buried in there somewhere. Any questions from the audience? I've got a lot more questions I can ask them, but I just wanted to give people a chance. Here we got one there.
Hi, I'm John Cully with the Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. I'm interested in the comments on agricultural water use and what technologies you would recommend for the ag sector for the beneficial use of water.
I didn't hear the end of the question about beneficial use of water.
For the beneficial use of water, the conservation of water, those types of things.
So I think the question was for the agricultural sector, what exciting technology or interesting technologies did we hear or learn about in terms of water efficiency or efficiency as water is applied in the agricultural sector? Would that be?
And even in crop development.
Crop development area.
Type crops, those types of things.
Yeah, interestingly, I didn't get a chance to sit at Judd Hill's table. I don't know if Judd's still here, but he has an amazing it's called the Global Adaptation Fund, and a big part of that is agriculture. So he's got some pretty interesting insights into what's happening there. But agriculture has been a bit of, and I'll be maybe curious on Mia's comments. It's been a bit of a tough one to get your hands around. Because a lot of the challenges that are facing agriculture, it's not like how do we close loop a farm, right? And start thinking like that. And I think there's going to be definitely big opportunities on the wastewater side, especially in certain types of food production, whether it's chicken or pork or these kind of things, where, for instance, you could take the waste and solid waste out of the wastewater streams there and use anaerobic digestion and turn it to energy and things like that. But I would say that was one of the things that at the summit that we didn't get a lot of conclusive ideas around in terms of how we're going to use it, but yet it is one of the largest consumers of water.
So, can I chime in? So one of the companies that presented, Aquaporin, has developed a forward osmosis membrane. And one of the ways that they're looking at using their membrane is when you're in the field picking an orange or a tomato in Chile or even in California, you're going to pick that and you're going to ship it somewhere with all the water in it. So one of the great things you could do to preserve the healthiness of the fruit, as well as the vitamins, as well as the taste, and conserve a lot of fuel, as well as water, is as you're picking the fruit, use a forward osmosis membrane, like the Aquaporin membrane, and create concentrate right on site. So we are seeing some innovation, but what I did notice with agriculture in particular is that if you're dealing with a fixed price in terms of food and a fixed price in terms of inputs, there's still a real challenge there. And this is something that we've been watching for a long time.
Yeah, certainly the comment that caught my attention on one of the panels, I think it was from John from GE Water. He looks on the food and bev side, but he used to be at Pepsi, was, the actual cost of the water inside that can of Pepsi was like a penny compared to all of the other materials and things like that. But the flip side of his comment was the cost is a penny, but that water is mission critical. And if it's not the right quality and the right quantity, that product, doesn't exist. So it's kind of an interesting trade-off again between, the economic cost of these things, but also the mission criticalness of it.
Right. I would say two comments. I mean, the first is in terms of actually seeing innovation and the sort of water efficiency play as it relates to the ag sector. I think for the investment community, it's hard for them to sort of wrap their brain around sort of a conservation play when there isn't, the price of water is off, especially in agriculture. But I will say that, we have seen, Pure Sense is one company, for example, that they're offering, that's a kind of smart irrigation play. So we see a few of those. And then to Laura's point, just in the ag sector in general, some, sort of process control, contaminant detection technologies that are relevant to, the food and beverage industry, for example, and, mitigating recalls, for example, and being able to detect contaminants, in real time. So, I mean, there is some innovation happening in that space, but I think the conservation play, I'd be interested actually to hear what you have to say about this, but, water tech concerned with conservation doesn't seem to be.
Unfortunately, I can't disclose because we actually have seen some pretty amazing water tech companies dealing with the agricultural issue. I just can't tell you about them because I got to work them first and put some money in them, then I can tell you about them. But
Dave, let me add one.
I was just going to say I want to give Trevor an opportunity also.
Let me chime in on that. What's interesting, I saw some great technologies in this agriculture space coming out of Australia. They've had some significant water shortage on last 5 or 6 years, and there are some very, very good micro and macro technologies. AquaSpy comes to mind. There's a few others that they're very progressive in this way. And another opportunity for your leadership summit that I've been thinking about is that Australian companies are coming here on the mining side to tap the capital markets. So why not take advantage of that momentum on the water side? They've got some cool technologies. Maybe we get them to do some R&D here, whatever, and just pull those Australian innovators into the mix.
It is a great point, and I'll do a follow-up question to that. Because you recently went public on the TSX, and the TSX is a very well-known resource exchange. I think there could be a very interesting opportunity here to build on that and also become a world-leading water exchange in terms of water companies. And like you say, if mining companies are coming from Australia, maybe part of our strategy should be, get the water companies to come here as well and be listing on the TSX and using that as part of their vehicle. How was your experience listing on the TSX?
Well, it was great. We, even though we're a utility company to some extent, we wanted to position ourselves as a clean tech company because of our software as a service model. And so we're also not a huge company, but we're beyond the VC stage. So when you add up all those factors, access to capital, clean tech experience, our size, it fits into the ecosystem comment that Laura mentioned earlier. You have to have angel capital, then VC capital, then PE capital, and then an exit into a public market. And you can't be $1 billion company when you get there. It has to be a market that's capable of managing companies with a couple $100 million market cap like global. And so I also think it's a natural fit for the extension of this when we incubate and nurture these companies, that we can then launch them here and this is the only market in the world that has that clean tech distinction and has done more clean tech deals than any other exchange. It's for that reason that we listed here.
Excellent. Carlos, I see you at the mic there.
So first of all, Dave, great job by the whole panel in ending this the way we started, with a lot of momentum. My question though, and first of all, kudos to you, Trevor, for what you've done so far, but I'm curious if you've thought about taking that business model a step further, not only to promote your SaaS, but also to monetize other new technology adoptions into utilities. So have you thought about potentially being a resource and then also generating income off of helping some of these innovative technologies take seed and get proven in a utility environment and potentially help them get that early adoption?
Yeah, and the answer is absolutely yes. And because what we found, oddly enough, in this model was that if we could answer those three questions, capital, IT, and risk aversion, then you can sell anything. The decision makers became indifferent to the technologies. So our whole model is about pushing municipal decision makers to the point of indifference. So at that point, now it sounds a little crazy, right? Because everyone's excited about technology and all they want to do is talk about technology. When you talk to me, I only talk about the behavior of decision makers. So think about this. If there's a technology out there that can monitor leak detect, for example, and it has some scalable prove up already, instead of selling that to the municipality in the normal way through an engineer or a gatekeeper or an RFP, whatever, in our model we would simply add 5 cents per bill per month. And in that way, we don't have a technological barrier or risk aversion to get over, and that's a means by which to get that technology into a market without the traditional two channels to market, which are reps and distributors in the US, right?
The follow-on question to that, if you're successful, not only is there a tremendous opportunity, maybe a game-changing approach, but not only the reps, I would imagine the engineering firms could see you as a potential threat in their stranglehold on some of the decision-making for the utilities. So I could imagine other utilities applauding you. I can imagine technology companies and the VC community and others really appreciating what you're doing, but that's a very disruptive approach. And I'm curious, have you had engineering firms or other folks who would stand to lose in that model voicing their objections yet?
Well, I like to tell people I got into the utility business out of revenge. So I was so completely frustrated. I am an engineer, so I like to beat up on the engineers every chance I get. And really, the engineering community in the days when I was selling into municipalities in the 90s was not helpful. We ended up getting to the ownership side to get past that barrier to entry. So yeah, this is highly disruptive. I don't care what they think, to be honest. I am dealing with the financial decision makers in crisis-stricken utilities, and they don't care either. So yes, it will be disruptive. That is my intention.
Good answer. We got another question here?
Hi, I'm actually a PhD student in computer science.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, my question might be too specific. But is there a need for computer vision or just computer systems that do pathogen detection in water, I guess water purification applications? That's, I guess, the first question. And a more general question is just what are the IT applications in the water industry? What are some of the IT applications there?
There was a comment that Jeff Garwood made. There was a comment that Jeff Garwood made as we were looking at a real-time water quality testing company today that I don't know if it came out during the actual discussion, but one of the key issues about water quality testing is that it would be great if you could get it on site. So you didn't need to take your glass of water, dump it into the river, run back home to the laboratory, or send it by FedEx and have someone examine it. If you could do it on site, that would be great. But what this guy Jeff Garwood, who's an investor, who used to be the CEO of GE, noted was that you need the entire infrastructure behind that to support it. So you need real-time water testing, but you also need a grid to make that matter. You need to have all the infrastructure in place to take that information and bring it on home. So there's a whole computer grid question around water quality testing as well as infrastructure sensing.
I mean, I'm going to pass this on to Trevor, then Mia will follow up with you. But Trevor, I mean, you've deployed quite a bit of IT. I mean, one of the things that amazed me about when I visited your facility is I found it eye-opening was when you started introducing me to some of your staff and managers as like ex-Intel guys, and you know, so I mean, you've taken a very different approach. I certainly think there's a big opportunity for IT to play in the sector. Do you want to comment?
Well, sure. So historically, you got to remember couple things. One is, historically, there have never been rewards for efficiencies in municipal utilities. There have not been rewards. There was no incentive to automate, to have less people, right? It didn't matter. Now we're in a new age. As a function of the financial crisis, we have financial scarcity, and we also have water scarcity. And that's driving the need for more data. And it's also driving the need for the first time in decades, efficiencies in utilities. And this goes to your decentralized point, right? Why do you build decentralized? Primarily because at scale, water reuse is becoming a function of the water balance in new communities. So whereas wastewater was something to throw away 10 years ago, now it's an integral part of your water planning. Put your water factories close to your customers, decentralized treatment, right? And that parlays into all the technologies that drive costs out of operations, pumping, blowers, reading meters, many functions in utilities that are fully manual now, can be relegated to the machines. So on the quant side, on the quality side, as Laura said, so there's a whole spectrum of IT opportunities emerging as a function of where we are, right? And this is a step function change that we're seeing. Financial crisis, water scarcity crisis. That's the opportunity.
Mia, did you want to add a comment on there? I know you've done a lot of work in this area.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think these two have covered it quite well. I mean, I would just say, to Trevor's point about really focusing on the customer's perspective, the last panel or one of the panels on industries that matter, for example. I mean, the folks representing the mining industry was saying, I'm totally forgetting his name at the moment.
Hugh Fleming.
Yes, of course. He was saying, yeah, wouldn't it be great if I could test on site and see in real time what the water quality is inside in our mines. So I mean, there is absolutely a need, whether it's at at utilities or, I mean, ask any potential buyer, they care about their quality, what they're dealing with in terms of what type of treatment technologies they're going to need.
I think one of the biggest drivers, which is not so obvious, but water reuse, I think will be the biggest driver of sensing technology, because in order to recycle the water, especially depending on what you're recycling it back into, you need to be sure certain things are not in there or certain things are in there. And the way our closed loop systems are going, you're not going to be able to afford to be able to take the scoop out of the water, send it to the lab, and take it back. So there is a lot of work being done, but I still have yet to see, and I don't know if anyone else has seen, I've yet to see the breakthrough yet that it's real instant monitoring. But I think people are working on it, and we will see it certainly in the near future.
Hi, I'm Bruce Lounsbury with the Calco Environmental Group. And we're involved in decentralized wastewater treatment systems, so I've got a bit of a vested interest in this question. And it builds a little bit on what Trevor was just talking about, I think. There's been a lot of debate between about decentralized versus centralized treatment systems. And I guess I have a vision that there's maybe something more of a hybrid system that we can talk about. So the enhancement of centralized systems using the strategic application of decentralized systems to increase capacity in particular areas, to make it easier for water reuse in specific spots, to unload capacity from the piping systems that are need replacement. And there's a bunch of reasons for it, but the utility industry, it seems like is not geared towards that at all. And I was wondering if any of our panelists would have any advice as I'm taking these ideas forward. How do you approach utilities, municipalities, the engineering companies who probably have a lot to lose by a more efficient approach to solving the problems? How do we make that sale so that people get on board with a new way of looking at things, this sort of a hybrid approach that is really a much more efficient approach?
Can we try that?
Trevor, you got an answer to that?
I don't know if I have an answer, but I have a comment. Totally agree with what you're saying. Historically, the drivers are different today than they are historically. And infrastructure for hundreds of years has been about getting waste as far away from where people live as possible. Now, water reclamation facilities need to be downtown. And the reason is because the waste product, recycled water, is of very high value. And so the way that this nut is cracked is by building the economic model around the value of water, that then the output of which is the size of pipes and things of that nature. Now, in existing cities, it's hard to do decentralized treatment, but there are good business models you can build on mining the sewer lines for specific pinpoint reuse applications. We built those models. I can show you that decentralized treatment in cities can work, providing the prevailing costs of water are sufficiently high to make it attractive, right? So it's all changing as a function of water prices going up. Whereas it didn't pencil 5 years ago, now you can show that it pencils. So new communities, there should be no question that decentralized treatment must go in there as a function of the absolute requirement to have recycled water as part of the water plan. In existing communities, you've got to be a little more creative.
Any other further comments there? Any more questions? A few more questions? No questions? No questions? Got one here? Okay.
Hello, Sarah Lewis. I'm an Economic Development Officer, a small community in Northern Ontario called Nippigan. In a rural community setting, what are the implications? We are very limited in the resources that we can put towards establishing new water infrastructure, treatment systems, and our infrastructure, just like many of the rural communities, I'm sure, across the country, has a time stamp on it that is quickly running out. Are there solutions coming from this conference that can make a difference in the rural setting?
You want to do that one yourself?
Well, I'll answer that one by saying yes. In a way, it's a summary of a lot of things we've been talking about. I think the solutions for rural communities is certainly going to be decentralized type systems. I think one of the big changes you've seen in water technology over time is we've been able to shrink the footprint of these systems, like an MBR system or something like that, where we can now, literally, you can put these things on the back of a truck and truck them up to a small community and plug them in. But that is going to be, for that to be economic and viable, we do need the IT piece to it, because one of the challenges we have with rural communities and water systems is the current business model where you need operators and all sorts of people there. Well, if you've got a small system, it's not very economical to have full-time people sitting there. But if we could remote control, remote monitor, remote operate these systems, I think that's going to be a wave of the future for a lot of these rural communities. And I do think certainly, we've seen it on the technology side, it's economical to do that. I think on the regulatory side, though, we would need to make some changes, because a lot of the regulations don't allow you to remote control systems. So I think this is an area where we do have to work with the government, and I know this is something that Ontario is certainly working through, is, okay, how do we remove some of those regulatory barriers, which made a lot of sense when they were put in place many, many years ago. Now we need to update those to match the advancement of technology. But I think it's a pretty exciting time, actually, for small community drinking water and wastewater treatment. Again, and I think it's a whole combination of technology, and also not just the treatment technology, but the technology around the system. I don't know if any of the other panelists want to add to that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
We'll start with Laura and then on to Mia.
All I would say is that the situation that you're in is a situation that is increasingly happening worldwide. Grid is running out. Infrastructure is running out. Everyone is going to be off grid eventually. And so you're actually on the leading edge of the new water management. And to the extent that Ontario steps forward and supports companies providing you with a solution, they can create green jobs from what is truly a big challenge right now.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, there are certainly some entrepreneurs, we've been coming across some vendors that have been paying attention to this particular market. I mean, one big one I think many people in this room know about is Puralytics. They recently won, the Cleantech Open, and one of their products, they're primarily, targeting, point of use sort of distributed treatment systems that are affordable for, rural communities that are using well water.
Great. Another question?
Hi, my name is Derek Lang, and I was wondering, with respect to water quality, what's the viability of going to a point of use, point of source system, as opposed to chlorination with all the supposed side effects that you can get?
So the question is, what's the trade-off between point of use or versus a more centralized approach where they put chlorine in the water?
That's correct.
That's correct. Any comments there, Trevor?
So in my opinion, I think that it'll be a difficult transition to get the whole regulatory body to go to just point of use systems. Honestly, I do think that there's a lot of merit in having decentralized systems, yes, but of sufficient size that you can have trained operators and skill and technology around the applications. Certainly, we've seen this interesting dynamic in the U.S. where there's gray water, the name for what comes out of sinks and showers, and recycled water, which is a purified product that comes out of a wastewater treatment plant that's ready for beneficial reuse. They're regulated by different regulations. You definitely wouldn't want to have a home-oriented recycled system, in my opinion. So it's some sort of hybrid. It's not the huge decentralized massive systems that we've seen historically, but I think there's still economies of scale and merit to point of entry systems that can be serving whole communities.
Any further comments? I just add one comment to that is there is certainly a big trend and a lot of research and a lot of technology being developed to move, even in a centralized system, to move away from chlorine for many different reasons, cost and security and things like that. So I think you are going to see some interesting innovations, but there'll be components of a bigger system. But I think it draws on a general comment that I always like to make, and that is, in water, there's no silver bullet, right? I mean, we get this idea that, someone's going to invent one technology and solve all our problems. I think there's great applications for point of use, but there's great applications for decentralized system. There is going to still be a case, it's like the mainframe. We still use mainframe computers, right? They haven't completely disappeared. There is going to be cases where it makes a lot of sense to have these big centralized systems. But I think it's all about the right application in the right place at the right time. And one area where I think point of use is going to get a lot of traction is, and Mia, you brought this up, and that is on the well water, right? I mean, there's a huge portion of the market that actually gets their water from wells, and I think there's going to be a growing need to tie it back to the earlier question, monitor it, analyze it, and then of course have technology to treat that at the source, because it's certainly not going to be economical to tie everyone up to a system. So like I say, I think it's different technologies for different applications. But you know, the one thing I love about this market, it's a $500 billion market. So there's plenty of opportunity in all those applications for entrepreneurs to create businesses around. Do we have another question? Or I think I'm getting the sign. Okay, so we're getting the signal. So maybe can we do a quick wrap, or is that? Okay, so one quick wrap. If you wanted to, this is your chance of glory. You know, if you wanted to leave the audience with one last message, what would it be? And Trevor, I'll start with you on that end to put you on the spot. And it can't be buy a global water stock. Right.
I've said enough shameless self-promotion already. I think the point I leave you with is focus on the market. There's a vast opportunity. Things are changing rapidly right now. Let's figure out the best channels to market that are disruptive and that give these fledgling companies a chance to scale like our lunch speaker showed us.
Excellent. Mia?
I mean, I would say, you know, as we all kind of look at technology development, and, you know, not forget what that, you know, again, that guiding star principle is, which is, you know, that we more, you know, sustainably use, you know, this very precious resource of, you know, of water. So I guess that's not forgetting that goal, not getting too kind of in the weeds about the technologies, but that, you know, our responsibility is to make sure that we, you know, we have enough water for our growing populations and economic development.
Laura?
So I guess I was a venture capitalist in Israel when the internet boom started for Israeli companies, and I watched some very young startups become billion-dollar companies and make some very rich individuals. I think this is that moment now in Ontario, and I think if we say we were here today, what's going to be happening in 5 years? I think you're going to see a very different landscape over the next 18 months in Ontario.
Well, my shameless promotion is going to be, I certainly hope it's all of XPV's companies that do the $0 to $1 billion over the next 5 years. But I want to thank the panelists and thank you all for the good questions. So thank you very much, and we'll turn it back over. Thank you.
How about a round of applause for our speakers today? So I would like to extend my sincere thanks to our moderator, David Henderson, and the panelists, Trevor Hill, Mia Javier, and Laura Shenkar, for sharing their thoughts and educating us on the exciting outcomes from this important water summit. At this time, we would like to present you with a small token of our appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our panel discussion for this afternoon. I urge you to join us for this evening's reception, which is beginning very shortly on the show floor. The next presentation at this theater will be a keynote address by Bill Buxton, the principal researcher at Microsoft Research, which will start tomorrow morning. I have no doubt he will provide fascinating thoughts and insight into human aspects of technology, design, and innovation. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy Discovery 2011.